So this teaching comes out of the four foundations of mindfulness, attributed to the Buddha, called the Satipatthana Sutta, for those that want the technical name for it. I'll just go through the four foundations: the mindfulness of the body, the physical form; mindfulness of Vedana, or feeling tone, which is what I'm going to talk about today; mindfulness of the mind, what's going through the mind; and the last one, mindfulness of the dhammas, which were all these various lists that the Buddha developed: Four Noble Truths, Noble Eightfold Path, five faculties, five spiritual faculties, seven factors of awakening. He and the rest of the Indians of the time were great list makers. So it's once again, it makes it approachable. But I want to focus on Vedana, the feeling tone, today, because I find it kind of fascinating and sometimes easily overlooked. So Vedana is, as I said, feeling tone. Now it's different from the Western understanding of feeling. Feeling we kind of associate with emotions, what's going on in the mind, which are valid, but that's more in the third foundation, mindfulness of the mind. Here, we're just talking about the initial tone, the initial feeling you get when you come in contact through one of your senses. That's it seems kind of technical, but just bear with me here. So if you look around this room, you will see, probably you'll find things that you like, hopefully. Maybe some things you don't like. Or maybe it's not affecting you at all, you're just kind of neutral. I kind of like this church. I kind of have my feeling tone that comes up for me when I walk in is, oh, cool, this is nice. There may be like the rug is kind of neutral for me. Look at the rug, it doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's not bad. I don't have any unpleasant sensations from it. Maybe the stain here or there, it's like, ugh, but that's anyway, it's that initial reaction. It's automatic. You don't really have a choice with that. Why the Buddha thought that was important is because from that initial from the initial feeling, you see how I wrote this down. When it comes in contact with the senses, it can easily happen as an emotional reaction to it. Oh, that's very pleasant, or experience comes in, it's very pleasant. I want to latch onto that. I want to cling to it, is the kind of the word that you used. Something comes into your experience that's unpleasant, initial reaction, once that contact has been made, let's just push it away somehow. And then the neutral, the way it's described, we tend to just kind of ignore it, disassociate with it, not get involved with it. It is possible, once again, mindfulness, right? Becoming mindful of this feeling tone. So if you're not if you become mindful of it, you have a choice, right? Something pleasant comes to your experience. I was giving this talk and someone mentioned a bowl of Kit Kats or some candies or whatever. You're not mindful of it, you eat one, then you know what happens next, right? Okay, all right. But if you have some mindfulness around it, maybe you don't start, or maybe just eat one, right? Even though the craving comes up for two, you think, I don't have to have two. And eventually, if you don't if you don't act on that clinging, what eventually is going to happen to it? It will go away, right? So you have a certain amount with mindfulness of this feeling tone. You have a certain amount, you begin to have a certain amount of freedom, personal freedom, because you're not being reactive to everything. You think about modern American culture, this beautiful corner of Long Beach you live in, how many opportunities do you have for unhealthy food within a walking distance? Intoxicants. Now, any chances could you find to drink alcohol on 2nd Street down there? I think you can find cannabis down there now too, right? I'm not getting judgmental on that, but you get the point I'm trying to make, right? It's a little bit of a minefield with this pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feeling tone. And then one teacher described the neutral as about 80% of our experience. 80% of it is just, it's not either, we're neither clinging to it, and we're neither pushing it away. But what does the mind do when there's not anything to cling to or things are unpleasant? My mind just it can easily just begin to ruminate, spin, come out of the present moment, disassociate, do its habitual song and dance. And how much of our lives do we lose now we go, not being present with it for our lives? So it's kind of an important thing to begin to look at. And once again, the idea is get that wedge in between the Vedana, what you feel, the feeling tone, and your reaction to it, and whether you can have a choice about that. That's kind of why this is so important. So I titled this, I think, Vedana, the texture of experience, title of the talk today, because it is the texture of our lives. We have these six senses. We have the five senses we normally associate with them: feeling, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling. The Buddha also included the mind, which is kind of interesting. So for him, there were six senses. And those six senses are always coming in contact with things, and they're always having Vedana attached to that. So it's just this constant kind of feel of Vedana going on in our lives. So the Buddha put it in something called the 12 links in dependent origination, which is very esoteric, and I'm not going to go into it too much because I don't understand it well enough to talk about it. But for him, it was feeling leads to craving, leads to clinging, leads to becoming, leads to new birth and aging and death. So he has this cycle of he calls samsara, the existence, and he also tied that to reincarnation. Many of you, Buddha came out of the Hindu background. He was a Hindu to begin with before his teachings. But he was a Hindu until, I don't know how, was he a Hindu? Was he a Buddhist Hindu? I don't know, was he a Buddhist or a Hindu? Anyway, you know what I'm saying. So he believed in reincarnation. This was the cycle. So to become aware of that, you can kind of begin to break the cycle, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, but you can begin to break that cycle. This is one of his sayings about this when he was trying to be a little simpler, more succinct. When this is, that is. From the arising of this, that arises. When this is not, that is not. From the sensation of this, that ceases. So we go back to my Kit Kat story. So when this is craving, that is. From that arising, that arises. More craving arises. When this is not, that is not. Right? So when you walk away from the bowl, it's not there, right? From the sensation of this, that ceases as well. So I think it's fairly typical for us to have the clinging to a pleasant sensation. And then for some reason, the pleasant sensation is not available, and we have to move on to something. And then where did that desire go when it's not around anymore? There's been impermanence, it kind of ceased to exist, right? For the most part. For the most part. Now this is where this is part that I find very interesting. This is what we're going to call, what I just described, we're going to call worldly Vedana. Has to do with the six sense bases that I mentioned, how we come in contact with what's outside of us. There's a whole category of unworldly Vedana. So let me, small story here. So the Buddha left home at age about 29. He left behind his young son, and he wanted to become awakened or enlightened or liberated. You could use the term you want. So the best teachers that he found were teaching concentration states, jhana, these deep states of concentration, very altered states as far as I understand. And they're also practicing some severe austerities, trying to tame the physical body. He was down to eating one rice kernel a day, getting extraordinarily skinny. He's supposed to be able to push on his stomach and feel his spine. He almost died. This is a 6-year process. And he imagined, at that point, he probably felt he was quite a failure. He had he was born to a high class. He was slated to become a prince. You can read all the stories about his life as a young man, and they're interesting. But his practice hadn't worked. He spent 6 years on this. He learned from his teachers. They wanted him to teach. He was very good at these concentration states of the practices he was teaching, but it hadn't worked. But then he remembered a story from his childhood, a memory from his childhood. His father was either a chief or a king, you can decide what you want to put in there. And he was a young man, I think he was about 7 years old, and he was sitting under a rose apple tree. And his father was doing this plowing ceremony. So it was the beginning of the planting season in this agricultural society. So it was very important. And he spontaneously, as a young man, fell into a very pleasant state, very peaceful, very pleasant state. One of these concentration states that I was mentioning. And it made a very large impression on him. So now, after these practices, austerities, almost killing himself, really, that memory surfaced. And he thought, could this be the way? Could this be the way, what I'm looking for, to this awakening, not through these severe austerities, not through pain, not through deprivation, but this way through this pleasant feeling. And that's when he shifted his entire practice. He began to eat again. He began practicing what he called the middle way. He didn't just become a slave to his sense desires at that point. But he began to eat every day on a regular basis and practice in a new way. And this was the avenue I want to start into this, what I call unworldly Vedana. So we just had a period of a half-hour meditation. Was there any unpleasantness? No. I start out using my mind spin. It takes a while to settle down. This was a while ago, but I was very judgmental of that when I was first practicing, maybe 20 years ago, maybe longer. But, I've been doing this for X amount of time. Why can't I just sit down and just go straight into it? Why do I have to sit here and spin for 15 minutes? I can't really do this. I should do something else. And then it would sit down and begin to settle down. I go, oh, okay, that's fine. But the beginning was always, for me, a little bit unpleasant. And still is in some regard. Why is that noise out there? Why is this? And then, things settle down. So that's kind of unworldly, unpleasant Vedana. And then pleasant states can arise. I'll go into more detail on that a little bit. You're meditating, and then the mind does so. And there's a certain pleasantness that arises. Hopefully that arose for you. I'm not. And then a lot of times meditation, at least for me, is quite neutral. Quite neutral. I sit down, meditate. The mind's still kind of busy. I've got the day ahead, but it's just neutral, and that's easy kind of to sink into this sort of neutral state. But if you're mindful of it, that's quite an interesting state. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. It's this kind of neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but you're aware, you're in the present moment with it. It's kind of neutral. Let's see what I got. So there's some other aspects to this. I'll come back to the meditation in a little bit. Unworldly pleasant states that lead to this awakening that the Buddha was talking about. And it's interesting. The first thing he talked about was generosity, dharma, we call it in Palo. What is it feeling like when you're generous with your time? With your time, let's stay with your time. What is that feeling tone to that? It's a different feeling tone than eating Kit Kats, but it's definitely a very pleasant feeling tone, very pleasant. And the Buddha based his sangha, if you will, his group of monks, based on this idea of generosity. They don't have any money. Even today, Theravadan monks don't carry any money. And so his monks at that time, and even in Southeast Asia, and to a limited extent here in America, they eat one meal a day. And that meal is provided by the community as an act of generosity. And in return, they teach the community meditation, whatever they can do to help. And one of the reasons Buddhism spread, especially into Tibet and into China and then later on, was because these Buddhist monks had some healing ability. And they would move up through there and practice healing people, helping people out without wanting anything in return other than a meal. And this helped Buddhism spread. So this idea of dana or generosity, when Southeast Asian, for the most part, Buddhism was being brought back to the United States. It was decided to keep that model open. Most of the teachers in the Western mindfulness movement, for the most part, they teach for free. And in the end of it, every retreat I've gone on, the teachers all taught for free, but then they would ask for donations. This is the way that this tradition has been carried on in our country for the most part. We can't speak for everybody, but for the most part. So it's based on generosity. You'll notice there was no charge to come through the door here. You'll notice I did ask for a donation, right? So this is the idea of dana, generosity, as a way into awakening and pleasant, unworldly Vedana. That's what we're thinking about. How do you feel when you're generous? It can be anything, right? Raising a family, whatever it is, the satisfaction. I've been around this organization for about 20 years. And I've donated time and money to keep it going. I'm on the board and they teach a little bit. But anyway, it really has been that for me, part of who I am, somewhat. And anyway, get to meet all kinds of wonderful people and be part of a community and all that goes along with it. So it all comes out of a certain amount of generosity, both on my part and everybody else's, to make this happen. And as Kisa knows, it's not always so easy to make this happen. We do a good job at it, but anyway. Well, here's one for you. Renunciation is another one. This kind of gets a bad rap in our society. But think about it, you've kind of renounced something to come here. Your phones are probably put away for this amount of time. You could have done something else with your time. You could have pursued pleasant Vedana out there, but you renounced something. And I don't know about you, when I leave after coming to a session of meditation, especially with a group, Sangha, I have a good feeling about it because I have not been out, for one of the ways, I have not been out trying to get grab for pleasant things and doing whatever that is, right? I've renounced that and just focused the mind. There's a certain amount of pleasantness associated with it. I don't know how good I am at renouncing when I leave the meditation center, but I have begun to turn off the phone for a while. I think many of us are becoming more aware of that. The endless dopamine hits, I guess it is, whatever it is. So coming back to concentration, even though I said at the beginning the Buddha was very good at concentration and couldn't quite find what he wanted to just these really altered states. When the mind gets focused and concentrated, I'm sure some of you had this experience, then what we call the hindrances are temporarily put at bay. The restlessness, the anxiety, the sleepiness, you should know them all by heart, the doubt that you could do the project, do the meditation, all that is put at bay. And the mind can just rest in being focused. That's a wonderful skill to develop. Sort of like a peace break for a while, a samadhi break or something, where you just turn off all of that internal dialogue for just that period of time. I can't really get deep into it unless I go on retreat for a number of days. And then on those retreats, you're silent, the phone's put away or you take it away, and you just focus on meditation and walking, and then the mind can really settle, for at least that period of time. And it's quite wonderful. But that's sort of a renunciation, right? The way I can get this going off when I'm not on retreat is mostly just taking a walk without my phone. And just, the physical activity, being out in nature for the most part, that works for me too. I'm sure you have ways of doing it, but a bit of renunciation. The last benefit of this are unworldly Vedana, clear seeing. I call it resting in awareness or resting in Buddha nature. Buddha nature is more of a Zen type of phrase. You don't see it materially Theravada, and they argue back and forth if we have one or not. Because this is going on about 2,000 years, but it's a useful kind of concept, at least for me. What happens when the mind is settled and you can just rest? What happens then? Right? From my understanding, these wonderful qualities can emerge from that space. What am I talking about? Okay. The Brahmaviharas can emerge, loving kindness, compassion, happiness, joy for the happiness of others, equanimity, the ability to just be with things as they are. And that can emerge out of this clear seeing that can be developed through practice. So there's all this internal Vedana that we can develop through this practice. I find it kind of wonderful. And I have a couple quotes for you. This is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Sow, like, not sowing, but sow like seeds. Sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an action and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. So to me, you can interpret this any way you want. To me, it's sort of showing that you could be a little bit an architect of your life. If you can understand Vedana, one of the ways is through what I've just talked about. Obviously not the old way, but pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, where do you want to go? If you're always going for the pleasant and you want to be here, I've ended up doing have this happen all the time. You want to go here, but you end up over here. Or where did that 2 hours go? So one thing leads to another. So that's an interesting one. And the last one, this is from the third patriarch, Zen. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. The point is not to find the meaning of life, but to experience life itself. The flower doesn't tell you its meaning, it just blooms. This comes from kind of a contemporary figure. I think he passed in the 1960s, Kodo Sawaki. Just sit. Don't try to become a Buddha. A radish is a radish. A Buddha is a Buddha. Just sitting is enough. I'll stop there. That we can develop, we are individuals. And the more we express our own Buddha nature, if you will, the happier we are, and the better I think the better we can create the world we want and the world that we want to see around us.
Hi, my name's Tim. It's the generosity of people like you that make these videos possible. If you had some benefit from the video and feel an urge to donate, you can make a donation here. If you're interested in seeing more because you're curious, you can click here and see more videos. And if you're interested in subscribing to Long Beach Meditation, you can click here. Thank you so much for your attention. Take care.